Hey, Leo. You're up. You ready, my friend? Big R for Rio. Leo. Leo for Rio. Let me warming up a little bit. I wanted to warm him up a bit because he's a bit cold. It's a bit stiff, you know? Hang on. Leo, sun yourself. Did you feel that? Alrighty. We ready? Big R. R. After Leo, we have a talk on exits, fundraising, and growth, and then we're going to burn the Pirate Man.
Thank you so much. Hey everyone, welcome. Thanks so much for joining my talk today. I love the R. If you can hear me, say R. R. Cool. Yeah, I followed along last year with a few things, and I really love the format of this. I love kind of how it's all set up. So I can share some stories. What I want to talk about today is sort of, the title is, when Helen and some of the Pirates on the team, they came up and said, like, let's talk a little bit about a buffer story. Now, who's heard about buffer before?
I've used buffer.
Awesome. Who's used buffer before? Wow, amazing. That's really, really great. And so we talked like, hey, here's the person in the golden suit, by the way. And so we said, like, okay, what are some of the things that we can talk about? And personally, I'm kind of in a space in a spot right now with the company, feeling slightly more emotional. So I'm gonna give a slightly more emotional talk about some of the things, some of the people that we have encountered on the buffer's journey and what we've learned from them along the way. So I want to hop into that. It's going to be 10 people that we've encountered on the buffer journey. 10 people that, I'm going to test this out a bit. 10 people that kind of helped us get to the next level. And the goal really is to kind of look out for sort of 10 companions along your startup journey that you might want to have on board to help you be successful. But yeah, really quickly, I know a lot of you already know Buffer, which is really exciting. We help you organize all your social media accounts. We help you schedule, publish, analyze. We help you connect to Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. So anything about social media marketing, we try and help you make your life easier. And really briefly about the company, we started in 2010. So we're almost 6 years old now, which barely makes us a startup actually anymore. Like sometimes you call companies startups for way too long. We're doing about close to $12 million in annual revenue, and we have about 60,000 paying customers, about 3.5 customers are registered with us. We have 80 team members spread in countries, so we are completely full. Everybody works from wherever they want, from kind of like all over Europe, North America, South America. It's really, really exciting that we get to have so many diverse. And our mission is kind of to focus on helping you, give you a voice on social media. Story today about some of the stuff that we all is starting a startup right now. Amazing. Who has revenue with their startup? Who has with their startup? $1 million a year in revenue. Only some hands go. I feel like what I want to do is kind of like, we're all on different parts of the journey. We all have different challenges, different problems. And what I learned, and I feel like we're not giving ourselves credit enough for when we start companies, this stuff is really, really hard. It's really, really difficult to start a company. It's emotionally really challenging. Personally, I've never really admitted that to myself until like, a couple of years ago, where we really acknowledged, wow, this is so hard. Why are we putting ourselves through that, right? There's so much other stuff we can do than starting a company. And it's kind of become quite glamorized in the recent years. But I think it's actually really helpful to acknowledge how difficult some of the things are when you start a company. Kind of really help you when you start a company, right? Because it's always to some extent by yourself. Even if you have peers like here, which is amazing. The journey that you go through, there's no one really that can fully relate to the exact idea that you're having, the exact challenges that you're having. To make that all a little easier and a little bit more, the journey, a tiny bit more easy to I feel like finding people, and the right people along the way, so people that really kind of make that next step that be easier way, right? That has the opposite effect harder. And these are 10 people that I've selected. And I think tell about our story well, that kind of take you through some of the things and some of the things that people have, gotten to know us for. And then also I think you to pick up kind of along the way in terms of who to invite to join your journey as companions, as part of the team, outside of the team, mentors, advisors, and so on. And the first person is about a guy called Keaton. He's fairly well-known personality in Silicon Valley, and he's sort of the man of the first hour being part of the buffer journey and helping be successful. And the story I want to tell is that when we first arrived in Silicon Valley, this is like roughly 2011, I just turned 21 years old. My co-founder is equally young as me. We didn't have any idea what we were doing, and we were meeting all these investors. So we're going from investor meeting to investor meeting, and they all turned us down. They all said, like, this is the worst pitch deck I've ever seen, and like, why would anyone invest in this, or this is not a good idea. It really got quite worn out. I think we had about 10, 15 meetings with investors, and there was absolutely no kind of light inside of anyone wanting to invest in us in any shape or form. I met Keaton in a coffee shop, and we were sort of there to kind of give all these pent-up energies. Like, we wanted to convince him, right? We wanted to be like, hey, we got turned down so many times, but now we want to really, get that one person that believes in us. And we arrived there on our bicycles that we bought from a really shady bicycle store in Berkeley that we later found out is actually owned by a guy that buys stolen bikes. And we paid $100 for a bike there, and we came up on our bicycles in Palo Alto to this shop, this ice cream shop. We met Keaton, and we were in our pitch, and he was like, we're pitching hard. It's like, this is what Buffer does, so we're going to change the world. It's like, this is why it's the best thing ever. And so halfway through the pitch, he cut off those words. He says, you don't have to convince me. I get it. I use the product. And we were so floored. We were like kind of feeling like all this pressure, all this amount of disbelief that people had, that many of you will experience, right, in your time. Disbelief, idea is crazy, what you're doing isn't right, kind of falling off. And he was sort of the first person in Silicon Valley in us and for building, and that really grounded us, right? It's sort of the first friend you make in a new place that you move to. For us, that sort of was Keaton. I'm really, really grateful for him that he kind of took a chance on us with that. He became an investor, and he also became an advisor, and he's one of the closest people. And I think if you can look out for the Keatons, the people that when everyone's already turning you down, that have experience but still believe in you, I think those people are really, really invaluable to find. And the second story is about a person. His name is Thomas Corte. He's the founder of AngelPad. AngelPad is a fairly well-known in Silicon Valley, and he is sort of a different type of companion, very different to Keaton, but I think very useful for all of us at the same time. So we got into the incubator AngelPad, and it's a 10-week program. Incubator programs are fairly well known now. And so we go there, and Tomas is the founder. Every day we meet with him, he asks this question: $1 billion company. Like, literally, imagine you know someone, every day you meet them, they ask you the same question and don't believe the answer that they're getting from you. It's taxing for us, because I feel like this question doesn't necessarily mean you have to build $1 billion company, but it forced Joel, my co-founder, and me to really, really think on a much higher level and go to a much, much bigger way of thinking. Even if it's not to the $1 billion level, if someone asks you this over and over and over again, and someone really challenges you, deeply believing that you're not there yet right now, that you could do better, that you could be thinking bigger, that you could be actually, encapsulate a wider vision than what you're currently doing. I think that's a really, really helpful client we didn't appreciate Thomas very much. It's just like, just stop asking us. Really annoying, right? It's like over and over and over. But later on, we felt like it did change our thinking. It did change our approach to how we wanted to build something and how the impact we want to have across the world. So the people that you encounter that just keep on stretching you that a little bit further, I think this is another type of companion really, really helpful to pick up along the way to build a company. And the third story is the first hire that we made at Buffer, sort of outbound hiring. We put a listing out, and her name is Carolyn. She's still at Buffer years later. She's now our Chief Happiness Officer. And here's what happened. The company was 3 people, and we were thinking we needed someone else to help us on a company. So we put up a listing. We called the title for the person, we call it Happiness Hero. Put this out, and we had about 100 people apply within the span of about 48 hours. So her email stood out like a sore thumb, and I told her this. And it wasn't because any of the credentials she had. It wasn't because of any of the places she worked at, even though that's important. Which kind of seems fairly mundane, right? It's out of context. It's like, well, what does that mean, right? She said, I hope you're not too inundated with emails after posting the Happiness Hero position. But she was the very first person out of 100 people that instead of focusing on herself, would kind of show empathy towards us as a company of what we were going through, which to me was sort of an amazing signal for who we wanted to bring on board and what we were kind of looking for in someone that would work with our customers and think about the customers first. So the idea of empathy and having someone that's incredibly, empathic towards other people is generally, I believe, not that widespread in startups. But if you can look for these small signals, these small signs where some people you meet along the way really think about, completely with full empathy about you first, I think you will do yourself a favor to pick up 1 or 2 of those people and have them part of your team to really make sure you keep on staying extremely, extremely human. So that's why I love this story about Carol. This next story is a really brief one about his name is Dharmesh Shah, the CTO of HubSpot. He's one of the investors in Buffer. And the thing that I find really amazing about Dharmesh is he invested in Buffer without ever talking to us on the phone, and we only exchanged 2 email conversations back and forth. And he said he doesn't like phone calls. He doesn't want to do that. And we were like, wow, that's incredible. How are we going to ever be able to get someone on board if we can't actually tell them about our vision? And he replied to one of our emails after we sent him our pitch deck where he said, we have a goal. I've decided to jump into investing in your seed round. And the reason this story I think is so important is that all of you building startups, some of you pre-revenue, some of you post-revenue, especially if you don't have a track record, if you haven't sold a company to Google for $500 million, then having traction, having social proof is kind of one of the most important things you can do. So if you can show in some shape or form that your company has already accomplished, some customers that pay you revenue, already has some people involved that, put their chips down and, put a bet on you, then it makes things so much easier. So much easier to the point that people like Dharmesh will invest with only 2 email conversations without ever talking to you. So I feel like in general, when people ask me, what's the best tip for fundraising? It's clearly this one, right? Just get traction, right? Get something that you can prove to people that people want it, right? And so that's really the main thing I've been taking away from Dharmesh. Anything we do, that we do show that we have traction. This story is a picture of an elephant, which is a comment on Discuss. And the comment reads, we're still friends. And I think this is one of the toughest times that we went through at Buffer. And this is a brief story that I love sharing because I think it really kind of shows that, it's not all fun and games in startups, which many of you have already encountered. So it's late 2013, where what happened to us is that Buffer got hacked. Does anyone remember who's Buffer customer that Buffer got hacked? Wow, there's some people in here who've been along the journey for a while. So essentially what happened is about 500,000 social tokens, Facebook and Twitter, were stolen from the Buffer database. So spammers would publish on those people's behalf. And it was obviously Buffer's worst nightmare, our worst nightmare. And I remember waking up that morning, opening my Facebook, and seeing tens of different people posting spam. And I see the buy a Buffer at the end, and I'm like, oh shit. I kind of felt like we had a good ride. For the first 10 seconds, I felt like, okay, this is it, right? We had a good ride. Let's pack it in. Let's do something else. And if you thought this kind of the journey was over. But after kind of 10 seconds, after a minute of kind of like refocusing, we kind of felt like, well, now that this thing has happened, what's the second best thing that we can do? And we decided just instead of packing things in and being done with the company, we decided to be extremely transparent with everybody. And so within 5 minutes of being hacked, we sent an email to our user base saying, we're hacked. We don't know why, we don't know what's going on, but we're investigating, we're going to keep you posted, but we know we're hacked. And throughout this time, there was sort of these next few days where we did everything from working with the FBI to sort of trying and getting things under control. We just tried to relentlessly, first and foremost, keep everyone informed as openly as transparently as possible. Now, a lot of companies have started to get to know Buffer about our transparency, about our public revenue numbers, about our public salary figures, about our public equity formulas. But a lot of people challenged us and said, like, it's easy to be transparent when things go well, right? And so instead of, and here we had a real opportunity to say, like, if things don't go well, you have a real chance and you still keep staying friends with people. And so the thing that this story really exhibits for me is that even when things get really tough, if you build up your values, if you can stick to them in tough times in the same way that you do it as in good times, the people will stick with you, right? And that's why I'm always going back to this article, especially to this. If you keep on sharing openly and transparently. This is another story that I really, really enjoy sharing. It's from a job applicant at Buffer that asked the question, why do you want to work at Buffer? And it's a common question. All of you have started to hire. All of you started to be part of answers, right? You want to know why they really. And there was no answer in the hiring journey so far, well over hundreds of people, that this answer had, which is the person said, I feel like I know more about I currently work for, so I want to work for Buffer. The most incredible thing, because I feel like it became this incredible new focus on our but really people started to say this. In the first month after we started to make salaries transparent at Buffer, we had 4,000 people apply. And one of them was this person and said precisely that. So that's kind of building up on the second question, the previous story around why. Because even if they divide, even if they polarize, you have some people say our Buffer ever is the worst thing that they're so transparent, which I totally understand as well. But it also gives you a chance to then work with those people that really, really do believe in you and really do want to be part of what you're building in your journey. So I'll always remember that as sort of like this idea that sticking to your values is just incredibly important. is more of a personal story where I have not really shared that much about this publicly before. But I feel like I'm a white male, which is very, very common in tech. And my eyes were sort of very blind to the idea that tech has a real problem in diversity. And it was only when Courtney, who was part of the buffer team, came up to me and said this sentence that I'll never forget. And she said to me, "You're at the top of the privilege pyramid." And all my life growing up, I believed in myself as someone who was like working hard, work, and who's successful because of, just grinding it out every day. But she gave me some books and some ideas and some articles showing to me that some of the reasons why I might be where I am, which is standing up here, has nothing to do with the work I put in, but maybe it's just to do with some of the privileges by right of birth. And I think like that to me really, really blew my mind because it really shaped my understanding of where my own blind spots are. So I feel Courtney is a companion that we have on board that I was able to encounter, help me point out my blind spots. And I think that's another really, really important companion that I hope every one of you gets a chance to, pick up on along the way. Someone that really helps you understand where your blind spots are and avoids that you sort of keep on doing the same mistakes over and over again. Only after she said that I started to look at our team picture and started to really feel like, wow, we really have a diversity problem, right? And to openly admit that, especially to myself, shattered not only the way we think about building a company, but really shattered my own self-belief of who I thought and my identity of who I thought I was. So I think diversity took me a long time to comfortable with, or the lack of diversity that I've kind of grown up with. But I think it's been one of the most formative things that someone said to me and helped me understand. And I keep on making mistakes. I keep on, when I talk about it, I keep on in interviews or in discussions with people saying like, we will hire him. When they would say like, well, how do you know it's and I keep on kind of like having this picture of like the white male in my head when I think about people that we want to hire. And it's a real challenge in my head that I really have to keep on working. And I think many of you may have that same experience. And so I just want to encourage you to keep thinking about that a little bit. This is a story that's very, very recent. This is a person we got to know, which maybe is one of the wisest men I've had a chance to speak to. His name is Sinofsky, and he used to build Windows 7. So if you all have used Windows 7 before, he was kind of the president of Windows at the time. He's now a VC at Andreessen Horowitz. He even helped us through one of the other most difficult times of operation, which was when we had to do layoffs. So there's a period just a few months ago where we made a bunch of mistakes in our startup. And we had to actually lay 10 people off because we started to overspend, we started to outspend, and we weren't making enough money. And we really made a lot of mistakes that we felt like to that degree we hadn't quite made before. Even with the hack, we didn't quite feel like it was our mistake as something that happened to us. With the layoffs, when you have to let 10 people go because you've kind of messed up how you're building a company, that's really been a real like arrow to the knee for us. And so when we talked with Steven, we were kind of very distressed. He's like, what should we do? We're making $900,000 a month and we're spending 1.1 million, right? Clearly that's a strategy that's not going to work out much longer. How do we do this, right? And so we worked through it with Steven. We worked through the challenges. We concluded that we had to do some layoffs, which is extremely difficult, but eventually sort of the right decision for us. And when we did come to that conclusion, we're like, well, how do you lay people off? If anyone has ever been fired from a job, you know that's the most stressful, most difficult thing you can probably go through. And I think there's even research out there that says like, the only other thing that's as stressful as that is having someone in your family die. So it's out of all the things that can happen to you, getting fired is one of the most stressful things that can happen. And so he said to us, forget all your problems about cash flow, forget all your problems about trying to run a successful company. The the situation you're in, you're only trying to do two things. The first one is you don't want the wrong people to leave. And the second one is you want to preserve the dignity of the people that you're laying off. And what really struck me with this quote, and what I think is a representation of, is that as you grow your company, as you get bigger and bigger, the only thing that matters is people. And I feel like I'm saying this sentence with like hearing myself cringe a little bit because such a cliche line, the only thing that matters is people. But I still think that I never really fully understood what that meant until he said that line to us. Now we're 80 people at Buffer, and it is truly the only way that we make progress. And I was sort of really, really excited that he kind of helped us teach that lesson. So this is the one thing I want to, as your company grows, find a Sinofsky along your way who really has worked with people really, really closely for a long time who can help you make those calls. Two quick stories, then I'm done and we'll take some questions. This is a very recent story that I'm really excited to share because this is a person, and I'll give you a second to kind of glance through that. This is a person who used customer service at Buffer almost a little bit as personal therapy instead of actually having a problem with things. So her husband had recently passed away, and she used the customer service at Buffer to email in just her train of thoughts around what was going on in her life and how she was coping with the death of her husband. And she tweeted at us, and we didn't know that at all. The person that was actually helping her wasn't publicly talking about that either to preserve her privacy. And so when she tweeted at us, she said, I really want to thank you because you helped me through this really tough challenge in my life. And the main companion that I see in Crystal, who's a really amazing Buffer customer, is that as you're building your startup, as you're trying to figure out your business model, as you're trying to figure out product market fit, as you're trying to figure out all those things that matter to be successful, the one thing that I think matters so much that we completely underestimate is care. And caring about your customers, caring about them as people, not just as people that pay you money, but fundamentally as people, has, I believe, helped Buffer to such a huge degree that we don't even know where we would be if we hadn't done that. So a lot of the things where we are fundamentally interested in helping people do something better, even without them paying us money or us paying more money, has an effect where someone would eventually do something like this. And that's something that really, really touched me very deeply and makes me very, very emotional to think about. And I hope, as you find your crystals along the way, lean into that, right? Don't push them away and say like, well, you're not paying me money and I gotta move on and keep making money here with this. But actually invite them in, because I think it preserves a human spirit in all of us that I think is really, really rare in business, and that makes it much, much easier to go that extra way. And this sort of comes full circle to what all the companions are that we meet along the startup journey. At Buffer, what we've recently started is we have an internal Buffer accelerator. We call it Buffer Accelerator. And the amazing thing is that it's a couple of people in the company can start a project and eventually spin it out into their own company, and they get seed funding for a while. And kind of everything that you know from Buffer Accelerator. One of the people that went through that, we asked him how it went, and he said it feels like we're crawling through hell. And what I love about that is sort of the honesty that yes, it's fun, yes, it's exciting to build a startup, but it's also incredibly difficult and really, really hard. And simply acknowledging yourself, going home sometimes and looking in the mirror and saying like, holy shit, this is really hard, I think is one of the most sane things you can do to preserve your own sanity. So I'm really grateful for Roy that he shared that, because I kind of forgotten at that point how hard it really is. Some empathy towards the people that were all starting out. That's sort of 10 quick stories, 10 companions that we encountered along Buffer. I hope some of these are people you'll encounter, and maybe some of them you'll encounter more of. You can email me, Leo at Buffer, anytime. There's more about how we're transparent, how we do things at buffer.com/transparency. It's just resources for everybody. And I'm Leo Witt on Twitter, Instagram, and all the social networks. So follow me there and say hello. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you all.
Thank you all. All righty, we'll ask you to come down. And
I'd ask that if you have questions for Leo, please, address him personally, in the crowd a little later on, because we haven't got time now. We need to move on quite quickly. So, can I invite onto the stage Stina Leland? How am I going to pronounce that? Stina. I'll pull Stina up on the stage. Okay, I apologize. Stina from 500 Startups.